In the silence that follows disaster, the world is left asking, how could this happen? I'm John, and welcome to Plane Crashed, where we uncover the haunting truths behind aviation's most unforgettable tragedies. Each wreckage tells a story, not just of metal and fire, but of people, choices, and the fragile line between routine flight and catastrophe. From the final words in the cockpit to the investigations that reshape aviation forever. We journey deep into the skies to reveal how history's most famous plane crashes changed the way we fly. Think and trust the machines that carry us across the world. Every flight begins with precision, but behind that precision lies the most unpredictable element of all, the human being. In aviation, the term human factors isn't just a phrase. It's a mirror reflecting our strengths and flaws, the fragile balance between professionalism and pressure, skill and fatigue, instinct and error. Pilots are trained to operate within strict parameters, to follow checklists and procedures that leave no room for doubt, yet time and time again, history has shown that the smallest human misjudgment can lead to unimaginable consequences. When a flight crew steps into the cockpit, they carry with them not only the responsibility for hundreds of lives, but also the invisible weight of human limitations. Fatigue can blur judgment, stress can cloud decisions, and overconfidence can quietly dismantle caution. Consider the Tenerife disaster of 1977, when two Boeing 747s collided on the runway in heavy fog. Miscommunication, impatience, and authority gradients inside the cockpit created a perfect storm where words were misunderstood and assumptions replaced confirmation. The result was the deadliest aviation accident in history, killing 583 people. It wasn't the airplane that failed. It was the human connection, the breakdown of understanding in a high-pressure moment where clarity meant survival. This tragedy redefined how pilots communicate, leading to the development of crew resource management, a system that transformed cockpit dynamics by encouraging open communication, teamwork, and the ability for any crew member, regardless of rank, to question a critical decision. But human factors go beyond communication. They infiltrate every layer of flight operations. Take the crash of Air France Flight 447 in 2009, where the pilots lost control of their Airbus A330 after pitot tubes froze mid-flight, causing the autopilot to disconnect. In the darkness over the Atlantic, confusion took hold as the pilots struggled to interpret conflicting data. Despite years of experience, the crew's reactions reflected a fundamental human flaw. In the face of uncertainty, the mind can revert to instinct rather than logic. The stall warning blared repeatedly, but panic overrode procedure. The aircraft entered a high-altitude stall and never recovered. Investigators found that training had not adequately prepared pilots to handle manual flight in rare but critical conditions. This incident revealed how deeply psychological pressure and cognitive overload can erode performance, especially when automation suddenly disappears. Human factors are not about blame. They are about understanding the human condition in an environment where there is no margin for error. Pilots operate in a world of precision, yet they remain vulnerable to emotional and psychological variables. A pilot's ability to make decisions can be affected by personal issues, lack of rest, or even subtle distractions that accumulate over time. The 2005 crash of Helios Airways Flight 522 is another haunting example. The aircraft failed to pressurize properly after takeoff, and the crew, disoriented by hypoxia, slowly lost consciousness as the plane climbed automatically into the sky. Passengers and crew succumbed to oxygen deprivation as the aircraft continued on autopilot until it ran out of fuel and crashed. The tragedy stemmed from a simple human oversight, a failure to properly set a switch during pre-flight checks, but the consequences were devastating. It served as a brutal reminder that even the smallest procedural error, when compounded by physiological effects, can lead to catastrophic loss. Fatigue, another silent killer, has also played a major role in countless incidents. Pilots often work long hours crossing time zones, their circadian rhythms constantly disrupted. Exhaustion impairs reaction time, judgment and situational awareness, and in the cockpit, that impairment can be fatal. In the 2009 crash of Colgan Air Flight 3407 near Buffalo, New York, fatigue and lack of training were key contributors. Both pilots were severely tired and failed to respond appropriately when the aircraft entered a stall. The captain's instinctive pull on the controls, a reaction born out of panic and fatigue, directly contradicted his training and sealed the fate of everyone on board. Human factors also involve social dynamics, how authority and hierarchy affect decision-making. In earlier decades of aviation, the captain's word was law. Co-pilots often hesitated to question their superiors, even when they sensed danger. Korean Air, for example, suffered multiple accidents in the 1980s and 1990s, partly due to cultural norms that discouraged junior officers from challenging captains. One tragic instance occurred with Korean Air Flight 801 in 1997, which crashed during approach to Guam because the co-pilot and flight engineer failed to assert themselves when they noticed inconsistencies in the captain's actions. This systemic issue prompted a major overhaul of cockpit culture, emphasizing communication equality and mutual respect. The industry learned that confidence and collaboration between crew members are as essential as technical skill. Yet human factors extend far beyond the cockpit. Air traffic controllers, maintenance personnel and engineers all face their own human limitations. A maintenance error, an overlooked checklist, or a misunderstood radio instruction can trigger a chain reaction. The crash of American Airlines Flight 191 in 1979 began when a maintenance procedure caused engine pylon bolts to weaken, leading the left engine to detach during takeoff. The pilots had no chance to recover. The investigation revealed that improper maintenance practices and communication breakdowns between teams played crucial roles. This accident underscored that human factors aren't confined to pilots. They permeate every corner of aviation. Cognitive biases, too, shape how individuals perceive risk and make decisions. The confirmation bias can cause a pilot to interpret ambiguous information in a way that confirms pre-existing assumptions, while planned continuation bias drives crews to persist with a flawed plan even when warning signs suggest a need to change course. One striking example is the 1999 crash of American Airlines Flight 1420, where the crew, eager to land amid severe thunderstorms, continued an unstable approach despite deteriorating conditions. Their determination to complete the flight, a classic case of planned continuation bias, resulted in an overrun and fatal crash. Emotional and psychological pressures often weigh heavily on pilots. The responsibility for lives, the isolation of long-haul flights, and the constant vigilance required can take a mental toll. In rare but catastrophic instances, this has manifested in deliberate acts, such as the 2015 Germanwings Flight 9525 disaster, where the co-pilot intentionally crashed the aircraft into the French Alps after locking the captain out of the cockpit. This tragedy sparked a global reckoning about pilot mental health, forcing airlines to reconsider how they assess, support, and monitor the psychological well-being of their crew members. It demonstrated that human factors are not only about error, they are also about emotional vulnerability and the systems designed to detect it before it becomes deadly. Technology, while designed to reduce human error, introduces its own paradox. Automation dependency can lead to skill degradation, a phenomenon where pilots become so reliant on automated systems that their manual flying abilities and situational awareness erode over time. When automation fails, the sudden demand for hands-on control can overwhelm even seasoned pilots. The Lion Air Flight 610 and Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 crashes involving the Boeing 737 MAX exposed how automation, when misunderstood or poorly communicated, can fatally intersect with human factors. Pilots were unaware of a new automated system, MSAS, that could push the nose down repeatedly, and confusion over its behavior led to catastrophic outcomes. Here, human factors expanded beyond individual error to encompass communication failures between manufacturer and operator, gaps in training, and assumptions about pilot response. The investigation into these crashes revealed that understanding human-machine interaction is just as vital as understanding mechanical design. Human factors are the thread that connects every aviation tragedy and every safety reform that follows. Each crash becomes a case study in psychology, communication, fatigue, teamwork, and design. The lessons learned are not about fault. They are about resilience and adaptation. Aviation has responded to human vulnerability by building systems that anticipate it. Redundant checklists, improved crew coordination, real-time fatigue monitoring, and advanced simulators that recreate the stress and confusion of real emergencies. But even as technology evolves, the human element remains at the heart of flight. No matter how advanced aircraft become, pilots must interpret, decide, and act under pressure, often in seconds. Their ability to remain calm, focused, and self-aware determines the line between recovery and disaster. The study of human factors continues to evolve, emphasizing mindfulness, emotional intelligence, and decision-making under uncertainty. It reminds us that behind every flashing cockpit warning and every calm pilot voice on the radio lies an inner battle to stay composed, analytical, and human in moments when instinct and emotion threaten to take control. The history of aviation is a story of progress born from pain, each tragedy exposing a facet of our own fallibility. Human factors teach us that perfection is unattainable, but understanding and mitigating our weaknesses brings us closer to safety. The sky may be unforgiving, but every lesson written in its silence pushes humanity forward. One decision, one correction, one heartbeat at a time. Aviation safety is not built on perfection. It is built on progress, and progress in this field often comes at a terrible cost. Every rule in aviation, every procedure, every checklist is written in the ink of tragedy. Air regulations are not arbitrary. They are the living memorials of those who lost their lives in disasters that forced the world to rethink how we fly. Each regulation represents a hard-learned lesson, a safeguard forged in the aftermath of catastrophe. From the earliest days of flight, the industry realized that freedom in the skies required structure on the ground, and so began a relentless pursuit to regulate, refine, and reform every aspect of aviation. The evolution of air regulations has been shaped by pain, by inquiry, and by the constant battle to outsmart human error and mechanical failure. In the 1950s, when commercial aviation began expanding rapidly, aircraft were growing faster, larger, and more complex, yet regulations lagged behind. Then came the tragedies that changed everything, like the de Havilland Comet disasters, where several aircraft broke apart mid-flight due to metal fatigue caused by square-shaped windows. No one had ever considered how cabin pressurization could stress an aircraft's structure in such a way. These crashes led to the world's first in-depth crash investigations and the establishment of stricter design and manufacturing standards. The lessons learned not only reshaped engineering, but also laid the foundation for modern airworthiness regulations, ensuring that aircraft would undergo rigorous testing for every conceivable stress before being cleared to fly. Each investigation became a blueprint for new laws. When an accident exposed a flaw, regulations followed like an echo. The 1974 crash of Turkish Airlines Flight 981 in Paris revealed the deadly consequences of poor cargo door design and inadequate maintenance communication. The explosive decompression tore the aircraft apart mid-air, killing all 346 people aboard. Regulators responded swiftly, enforcing new global design standards for cargo latches and introducing mandatory redundancy systems to prevent a single point of failure. That single tragedy led to sweeping safety measures that saved countless lives in the decades that followed. Air regulations don't merely respond to failure, they evolve to anticipate it. This principle became more critical as air travel boomed in the 1970s and 1980s. With thousands of flights crossing continents daily, oversight had to become international. The creation of the International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, and later the European Union Aviation Safety Agency, EASA, transformed the fragmented world of aviation into a unified network of standards. These organizations established the framework for global cooperation, ensuring that pilots trained in one country could operate safely in another, that maintenance records followed aircraft across borders, and that accident reports were shared to prevent history from repeating itself. Regulations began addressing not only machinery, but also the human and organizational aspects of flight. The Tenerife disaster, which claimed 583 lives, didn't just expose communication breakdowns. It forced regulators to codify cockpit language and phraseology. The phrase, "cleared for takeoff," became sacred, used only when absolute certainty existed. Crew resource management, CRM, once seen as a cultural shift, was now embedded into regulation, requiring airlines to train pilots in teamwork, assertiveness, and error recognition. It marked a turning point where safety was no longer just about machines, it was about the people who operated them. Air regulations expanded again after the 1985 Japan Airlines Flight 123 tragedy, where a faulty repair on the rear pressure bulkhead led to explosive decompression and the deadliest single aircraft accident in history. The investigation revealed not only maintenance negligence, but also regulatory oversight gaps. In response, authorities introduced stricter maintenance inspection programs, mandatory repair documentation, and more rigorous training for technicians. These measures emphasized accountability at every level, ensuring that no repair went unchecked, no part unverified, and no warning ignored. With each passing decade, regulations became both broader and deeper. The focus shifted toward prevention through technology, leading to the mandatory installation of cockpit voice recorders, CVRs, and flight data recorders, FDRs, the black boxes that silently record every flight's final moments. The 1960s and 1970s saw their global adoption after repeated incidents where the lack of data hindered investigations. By requiring these devices, regulators ensured that no mystery would go unsolved again, that every crash could speak from beyond the silence. Then came the 1990s, an era of rapid digital transformation. New technologies introduced new risks, and regulations had to evolve in real time. When automation began dominating cockpits, regulators implemented policies ensuring that pilots maintained manual proficiency. After the mid-air collision over Überlingen, Germany in 2002, caused by conflicting instructions between air traffic control and an onboard collision avoidance system, regulations were rewritten to clarify that pilots must follow the automated system first. Each rule carried the scars of confusion, the voices of those lost to regulatory gaps. Security, too, became a regulatory cornerstone after the September 11th attacks in 2001. The world witnessed the unimaginable, airplanes used as weapons. The aftermath transformed global aviation law overnight. Cockpit doors were reinforced, passenger screening intensified, and air marshals became a fixture on many flights. The creation of agencies like the Transportation Security Administration, TSA, in the United States set new international standards for security oversight. ICAO expanded its Annex 17 to include unprecedented measures for threat prevention, redefining the very concept of aviation safety to include protection from intentional acts of terror. Regulations had always guarded against accident. Now they had to defend against malice. Yet with progress comes complexity. Each new rule adds layers of compliance, paperwork, and cost. Regulators walk a fine line between safety and practicality. Too little oversight invites danger. Too much can paralyze innovation. The Boeing 737 MAX crisis revealed how this balance can fail catastrophically. The two crashes, Lion Air Flight 610 and Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302, exposed flaws not just in design, but in the regulatory process itself. The U.S. Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, faced global scrutiny for delegating too much authority to the manufacturer, leading to gaps in oversight and communication. This scandal sparked a global regulatory reckoning. The FAA, EASA, and ICAO revised certification processes, demanded greater transparency, and required full pilot training for new automated systems. The incident reminded the world that regulations must remain independent, vigilant, and immune to corporate influence. It proved that safety cannot be assumed, it must be constantly earned. Air regulations also extend to environmental and operational sustainability. Modern rules address noise reduction, emissions control, and fuel efficiency, shaping the future of flight to protect both passengers and the planet. The rise of drones, electric aircraft, and autonomous systems poses new challenges that demand fresh thinking. Regulators now face questions unimagined by earlier generations. How do you certify a pilotless plane? Who is responsible in an AI-driven malfunction? These questions are shaping the next frontier of aviation law, showing that regulation is not a relic of the past. It is a living organism, adapting to new skies. Throughout history, every tragedy has forced the world to stop, investigate, and rebuild with stronger safeguards. The Lockheed L-188 Electra accidents of the late 1950s led to stricter vibration testing. The 1988 Aloha Airlines Flight 243 incident, where a section of the fuselage tore away mid-flight, led to aging aircraft inspection programs. The 1996 ValueJet Flight 592 crash in the Florida Everglades revealed the dangers of poorly regulated subcontractors and hazardous cargo, leading to enhanced oversight of maintenance outsourcing and cargo classification. Each regulation that emerged carried one purpose: to ensure it never happened again. What makes aviation remarkable is its ability to learn without denial. Unlike many industries, it treats every accident as a teacher. Regulators, engineers, and pilots all share one silent pact: to never let a tragedy be forgotten. Air regulations are the physical embodiment of that promise. They exist not to restrict, but to protect. Not to stifle flight, but to make it possible. Behind every smooth landing and every safe journey lies a century of trial, error, and reform. Regulations have also expanded to include psychological and human considerations. Following the Germanwings Flight 9525 disaster, new laws required airlines to monitor pilot mental health, mandate psychological evaluations, and ensure at least 2 people remain in the cockpit at all times. These policies marked a profound evolution in how aviation views safety, not merely as mechanical reliability, but as holistic well-being. Safety, regulators realized, begins in the mind as much as in the machinery. The global cooperation behind air regulations is one of humanity's greatest achievements. Countries that may disagree on politics or trade still share safety data, coordinate responses, and align their standards to protect passengers worldwide. This unity ensures that an aircraft built in one country and flown across continents adheres to the same rigorous expectations everywhere it lands. The safety we take for granted today is the result of decades of relentless coordination and the humility to learn from failure. Yet the process never ends. New threats, from cyber attacks on aviation systems to the integration of space travel, continue to push regulatory boundaries. The same spirit that transformed early aviation into the safest form of transport will now guide humanity into these new domains. Every new rule, every revised certification is a link in the unbroken chain of accountability that stretches from the Wright brothers to the edge of space. Air regulations remind us that perfection in aviation does not exist, but improvement always does. Each crash investigation, no matter how painful, becomes a source of knowledge that prevents the next one. The cycle of loss and reform, of tragedy and resilience, defines aviation's soul. Regulations are not mere bureaucratic checkboxes. They are the conscience of flight, the invisible hand that keeps chaos from returning. They stand as humanity's answer to gravity's challenge, not just how to fly, but how to fly safely, responsibly, and with reverence for the lives carried among the clouds. In the end, every plane crash tells a story far greater than the tragedy itself. It's a story of learning, adaptation, and the unbreakable human will to make the skies safer. Through the investigation of wreckage and the rewriting of regulations, aviation has evolved into a system that honors the lives lost by preventing their mistakes from being repeated. Each change, each new rule, each improved design is a tribute to those who never made it home. The sky is a place of both beauty and consequence, and as long as we continue to seek understanding from every failure, every flight that takes off is a silent promise to remember, to improve, and to never stop striving for perfection in an imperfect world.